Welcome everybody. Good morning to you all. As you can see from the slide, we've got a few instructions for you straight away. The session today is going to be about WM 5G Phase 2, and this is going to help you look at the competition, the funding competition, the scope, the eligibility, the background to the call and the amounts of money that is available. First of all, may I start with some instructions and some introductions? The instructions are just please keep your mics on mute. It does help us. And if you want to keep your cameras off, that's also very helpful because it cuts down bandwidth. My able assistant, Richard, who I may introduce to you right now. Richard, are you there? Say hello.
Hello there.
Is operating the chat box for this morning. So when we come to the Q&A, or as you've got questions as we go through the session today, please put your questions into the chat box. I will read them out at the end of the session when we get to the Q&A part. The webinar is going to be recorded and we will send you a link along with other information and the presentations at the end of the session. And this will be available on the WM 5G website as well. So moving along, we've also got a couple of people in the background, and this is being filmed on YouTube as well. So as I've mentioned, it will be available later. So we also have Anita from KTN working in the background. So if you hear a voice from in the background, that could be Anita, or we could have Sarah from Wizz Air, who's taking care of all the video. So if you hear voices in the background, please don't worry. We will be sorting out some technology issues in the background. So I wanted to just kind of talk about UK 5G just before we go into the session. So if you are interested in 5G and you're not a member of the UK 5G network, may I suggest you look at joining the network. It's run by Cambridge Wireless, KTN and TM Forum. My name's Andy Curtis. I work for KTN. So we're one of the lead partners on this project. And as you can see, it's got full of information around the briefing today on the certain pages in there, and you'll be able to see those on West Midlands 5G pages as well. But if you join up, you get access to all information around UK 5G, what's happening in the 5G industry and what's hot in the sector. There's a variety of things happening right now because it's 5G week. There's a variety of activities around the country. So please sort of sign up and get the latest updates on that. Right, straight into the agenda. So may I introduce Chris Lane, who is going to give us an overview of Transport for West Midlands and other information. So I've got to do some technical things here, so excuse me for a second.
So hello everybody, I'm Chris Lane. I head up Transport Innovation for Transport West Midlands. We're part of the West Midlands Combined Authority. And I'm going to this morning just talk to you a little bit about what's happening in transport at the moment. Quite topical with the pandemic and what that's doing to transport. And it helps us think about how 5G can help us make a difference in these particularly challenging times. So these two maps you can see at the moment on the left-hand side shows you how many people drive in single occupancy cars in the West Midlands. It's quite significant. We actually have the longest urban bus route in Europe, but the level of ridership on that is significantly less than car. And one of the things we'd like to achieve in the West Midlands is people travelling in a more sustainable way. And there's a whole host of benefits for that. We're taking our time at Transport for West Midlands to really understand how people travel. Around 63% of West Midlands journeys pre-pandemic were made by car. And we're trying to understand why people make that decision. We've seen that people can experience roadworks, delays, all sorts of problems, and they will still do the same thing. They will still get in the car. And what we're looking for is a modern transport system that's going to transform the way people think and make these decisions. We all know about COVID. You'll have all seen the graph on the right-hand side on the news in our regular briefings. I think we'll do another one this week. But there's been a lot of changes through what's happened through COVID-19. The public are getting a very different message from us in terms of their travel choices. They're being told to use the car, have been told to use the car and to isolate themselves. And what that is really leading to is a period of recession and an economic impact. What we've been trying to do as Transport for West Midlands is to provide people with the facts. And again, this links really nicely into what the capabilities of 5G are. So here you can see our daily dashboard. We provide updates on the pandemic rates and by district, which is very, very topical at the moment. But we link that through to the way the public transport network is operating. This week saw back to school. And again, we're understanding how people are travelling when they return back to school. It's not all bad. There's good and bad for what's happening. All the trip making is actually down at the moment, but that unfortunately means public transport's down, giving financial and commercial implications. Car use is down as low now as the 1950s, but people are working from home. Walking and cycling is up. And the long-term car use is potentially up. It could be higher than pre-pandemic levels. And the good part of that is that we're seeing lower carbon emissions, improved air quality, reduced noise. But the downside is that we're seeing economic impacts and reduced access to mobility. So how have we responded to the pandemic impact? I'm just waiting for the slide to advance. So in the short term, we really focus transport on getting the key workers and the critical workers to the services they need. So we try to adjust and work with the transport that we had to get the people to the right places at the right time. We're now seeing the transport system starting to reopen, demand going up. I think it was a significant shock to people to see lots of school children on the buses and the trains in the West Midlands. And we have to manage that transport system very differently. But transport is key to our economic recovery. We need good access, and that will help us aid our economic recovery. And transport investment in new forms and new ways of transport can also be a catalyst to growth as we go forwards. In the West Midlands, we have future transport zones, and we can see the application of technology, 5G, for example, can really support that recovery and that growth. We see 5G, as you'll see, as the second box in this diagram, as part of a portfolio of initiatives that we're running as from Transport for West Midlands. We've done a lot of work with ultra-low emissions vehicles. We've done a strategy for the West Midlands and understanding how those vehicles can be charged to allow people to feel confident in using electric vehicles, but also exploring other alternative fuel technologies. There's been a successful trial of hydrogen rail at the Tyseley Energy Park in Birmingham, and we really do see this to be an important aspect. At West Midlands 5G, I won't say much more because Chris will have a lot to say on that in a little while, but we do see it as a fundamental pillar of our portfolio of mobility. We also have a connected and automated vehicles test bed, which covers a very large geography, 3 of the districts within the West Midlands and some of Warwickshire. This is an opportunity for people to come and test new technologies, test new vehicles, and also test those services. So we see the future as not being able to run a car autonomously on a road, but to provide a new type of transport service. And that moves us on to the future transport zones box, where we are genuinely trying to work with a number of locations to understand how people make their decision to travel and to improve that. Our goal is to have a digital transport network using digital twins. So it's to have a perspective across the whole network in digital form. If you're thinking that you're a connected or automated car, the way you work at the moment, if you wanted to know parking restrictions or speed limits, you would have to sense that environment. But we see with things like 5G, with sensors, with other technology, that environment can tell you what's actually happening. It can provide that information to those vehicles and improve the way the network moves. We have another initiative here on the screen called Convex, which is a commercial mobility data exchange platform. It's an opportunity to take these really exciting new data sets generated through transport, 5G and other things, and then make those available to others in a commercial way, so as paid for data sets. And this platform will be live in November this year. I'll just go back one slide. So the reason that we see this data as being critical is that we want to exploit that information to provide a resilient network, a network that moves. Our ultimate goal, if any of you guys can help us, will be to predict where problems are happening before they happen, to be able to respond before an incident becomes a problem for the network. So what we want to do is to bring all these technologies together. We see 5G as a really key enabler for this, to allow us to make positive decisions around events as they start up again, but also around the day-to-day travel within the West Midlands. So resilience is really key. How do we keep the network in the West Midlands moving? Talk a little bit about our connected and automated mobility. On the right-hand side, you'll see 2 pictures from a project called UK Auto Drive that the West Midlands were involved with. So we have had self-driving cars on the roads in the West Midlands. The picture at the top is a lovely junction in Coventry. It's a negotiated junction. It has no lines. It has no give way. Pedestrians, vehicles, cycles all have to negotiate that junction together. And we thought it would be a good idea to run an autonomous car through that junction, which was done successfully. The picture underneath, as many of us do, we're on our mobile phones, and this chap crossing here was completely oblivious to the fact that that car that's just stopped for him at the crossing was driving itself. So we have experience of actually putting self-driving cars on the road. And we have created this environment, and you can see with the map on the left-hand side, the geography that we're covering. It's a significant area. We're covering motorways, we're covering the city roads, we're covering rural roads, things like fords and those humpback bridges that are single carriageway. We're covering complex junctions, roundabouts and layouts. And part of our testbed will include 5G facilities. Within that testbed, we're putting cameras, those standard cameras and artificial intelligence cameras, weather stations and environmental sensing, roadside units to talk to the car and for the car to talk to us. And then we have actually created a point cloud image of all of those roads as a digital twin, so people can experience the network before they even have to take a vehicle out there. What we're doing is we're not just doing technology for technology's sake. We're creating a number of transport showcases. You'll see the picture in the bottom right-hand corner, that's Birmingham Airport. One of the people that we're talking to about how we can help them get people to their site in a much more effective way. So as we look across the whole transport provision, we're saying, well, what is the existing provision? And can we actually improve what's already there, whether that's the infrastructure or the service itself? Can we look at new forms of transport, lift sharing, car clubs, demand responsive services? And we are now live in the West Midlands with e-scooters. Hopefully you'll see those around on the streets of the West Midlands. So can we add those new services in to improve the way people move? Can we then overlay that with experience amplifiers? And I'll talk about that a little bit more on my next slide. And then what we found is the interface people have into those services is really important. You know, and actually we've seen this with a number of successful apps on the market at the moment. People need a very convenient, very easy to use way of accessing all of that transport that removes the complexity for them. So we are building those interfaces in conjunction with a very successful Swift public transport smart card. And then once we've got that working, we're looking at what we can do to incentivize people. So if you lift share, can you park in front of your office so you just walk in the door? But also then what are some of the disincentives? So what are the things that we can use to discourage people from travelling in unsustainable ways? So I talked about experience amplification. You'll see in the bottom right-hand corner of the picture there is Warwick University. And we're working with the guys at Warwick University. Students will be back studying at Warwick any week now. But what we want to understand is what makes people, what motivates people to make their different choices. And it's very interesting with the current pandemic that some of these motivators have changed. Some things are more important than others. Is it that they want to feel safe? Do they feel that they want to be in charge, in command? Is it their well-being? Do they just want a service? Do they just want some confidence they can get to their destination? Do people want to work and be productive on their journey? Do they just want to be entertained? And very important needs today is, do they just want to socialise? Do they just want to talk to people? So it's thinking about people's emotion, their access to those services and the effect of those. And again, 5G, we believe, can bring some significant opportunities to these different experiences. And you can see maybe how 5G could enable some of that experience amplification over those transport modes. So really thinking about this particular competition, and I know Chris Holmes will talk a lot more about this in his slides, but for us at Transport for West Midlands, we're really thinking about moving things in an efficient way around the West Midlands. So thinking about freight and logistics, we've seen with the pandemic, there's so much home shopping, so much home deliveries. Supermarkets have been inundated. I think Tesco's have shown that they've got a significant growth and are taking on staff. And actually, we need to think about how we move that freight and logistics, how we bring all of that together. And again, we believe 5G can be an amazing opportunity in that field. But then also people. Public transport is starting to recover, and we need to rebuild traveller confidence post-COVID. So what is it that we can see? What is it that we can do with 5G that starts to rebuild that confidence? And then actually the basics, the nuts and bolts for us, the road operation and its management. How can we improve the congestion situation? How can we make sure we continue to reduce emissions? The pictures on the right-hand side show just some of the components of our transport network. High Speed 2 is under construction. Birmingham Airport was a growing global airport and will be again as we get through the other side of this pandemic. We are investing in our rail stations. We're investing in our tram and metro system. We call it the Cross Rail of the West Midlands. We do have the longest bus rapid transit system in Europe under development at the moment. We have the biggest bus network outside London and have electric buses running around the West Midlands. We have an extensive highways network, great links and partnerships with Highways England and the motorways. We're a significant part. Within 4 hours, you can reach 90% of the commercial destinations within the UK from the West Midlands. And so freight and logistics for us becomes really vital and really important. So that's given you a bit of an overview of what's happening in transport in the West Midlands. We are very happy to take questions and listen to your thoughts and ideas. Those are my contact details, and they'll be on the YouTube video and available afterwards. And I'd just like to thank you for attending and listening. What we'd like to do now is we'd just like to show you a video, and then Chris Holmes will come and talk to you about the 5G transport competition itself.
West Midlands 5G is here to accelerate the opportunities that 5G will deliver to the mobility sector, helping the region get 5G transport ready. We're here to test, prove and scale new 5G services, with more than 70 transport-related use case ideas proposed so far. It's all about getting people from A to B across the West Midlands with the help of 5G technology. We're working to get the region's roads 5G transport ready. Designed in the 1900s, the region's roads are not geared for the future. We need a more intelligence-driven transport infrastructure. A 5G-enabled road will be able to detect all road users from bikes to buses. 5G cameras and sensors will identify speed, location and details of vehicles on any section of a road. This will be fed into intelligent systems to help control today's traffic. In tomorrow's world, this connection will extend to autonomous cars. But it's not all cameras and sensors. In a world where everything is connected, driving will become more efficient and safer. We're getting our rail networks 5G transport ready. Currently, Birmingham and Coventry are two of the UK's most congested cities, with car travel favoured over public transport. But trains are often delayed, platforms and stations are overcrowded, passengers are anxious and often running late. With 5G, that all changes. A station control room oversees live HD CCTV footage, keeping passengers safe. Real-time information is displayed on interactive information boards, improving passengers' journeys. The Wi-Fi service is vastly improved, allowing for greater connectivity. but most importantly, trains and trams run on time. Achieved via a network of sensors and access to live data downloads, 5G will enable train and tram services to be better managed, improving the experience for all. We are working with our partners to get passenger experience 5G transport ready. In a digital age, the expectation is to be productive on the move, whether that is for business or just to watch a film on the journey home. But current transport services are not able to meet passengers' needs, with many suffering from a poor experience. On the train, bus or tram, 5G will offer faster speeds, increased capacity and low latency, putting an end to buffering when streaming and lag when gaming, allowing passengers to make the most of their travelling time. But it's not just public transport where better connectivity will make a difference. 5G-enabled vehicles will present an entirely new passenger experience. Imagine stepping into a 5G-enabled vehicle, being presented with a driver profile, a predicted journey, as well as the safest and most efficient route to the destination. In the back, a child has the ability to play a game, with augmented reality enabling them to interact with the world as it passes by. Once en route, parking sensors across the city will help 5G-enabled vehicles connect to local infrastructure, instructing drivers where to park, sourcing and securing a space. Over time, increased intelligence, sensors and 5G connectivity in our vehicles and the infrastructure around us will change our entire experience of travel. So that's what's achievable with 5G, but none of this is possible without you. Get involved and help us get the region 5G transport ready.
Okay, good morning. My name's Chris Holmes. I'm the Programme Director for Transport in the West Midlands 5G. Really pleased to join you today for the launch of the second 5G competition this year with a transport theme. I wanted to start by just recapping on what and who WM 5G are. So we were created just over a year ago now to deliver two main outcomes. The first was to help the fast rollout of 5G across the West Midlands. This has been facilitated by looking at site locations, agreements associated with those, information on connectivity and not spots associated across the West Midlands, and assisting in access to fibre. The second area is around providing funding to support development of products and services, and that's my focus with transport within that arena. So what mobile coverage have we got for 5G in the West Midlands? So this is a map showing the 7 local authorities across the West Midlands. We have got good coverage, initial coverage across a number of towns and the big cities, and an independent study just recently by Umlaut just shows where we are in the West Midlands versus some of the other combined authorities in the UK. So we're very much in the lead at the moment, which is partly helped by the work that the West Midlands 5G team have been doing so far. So why is there a 5G transport programme? So just to recap on some of the highlights and some of the challenges, if you like, across both the road and rail. So you can see from this slide, there's a number of challenges in terms of congestion, safety, emissions, and the growing health concerns around that, even through to parking as well on roads. And on rail, similarly, I guess punctuality has been an issue, and the sort of operation effectiveness around that. And then there's quite a few issues around customer satisfaction. All of these things can be helped by 5G and improved mobile comms, as evidenced at the bottom of this slide. So whether it's live traffic data on the road, enabling traffic interventions, maybe it's flexibility around curbside, and supporting new technology and the growth around that nationally and the West Midlands as well. In rail, then there's plenty of opportunity around improving availability of connectivity and looking at passenger safety, through to then opportunities for new products and services which are enabled by that live data. So what are the key strategic objectives that we have? So there's 3 of those. The first one is looking at efficiency, and efficiency of operation, which can translate to cost, or it could be on-time delivery of service. It's also, the second one is about looking at expansion of the transport across the West Midlands. So there are plans to increase the coverage of the tram availability. Chris has already talked about the wide bus network coverage, and there are initiatives looking at that as well. But accessibility of transport to everybody in the West Midlands is very important, and we wanted that to be a second focus of our attention. And then the third strategic objective is around traveller experience, and this could be a number of different things through better journey information or better utilisation of your time when you're travelling. So what does the programme look like? So this is an overview of the plan. So at the bottom of the plan, you can see the stages of the road centre network, which I'm going to describe on the next slide. That's split into phases. So we're now very much into delivery of the first phase of that road centre network across the key route network, which are the main arterial roads in the West Midlands. And then through next year, there will be then a major implementation of quite a number of more sites across that road network. So the competitions themselves are looking at products and services and helping funding organisations to develop new, innovative, exciting products which make a difference in transport. We've run the first competition earlier this year. There's 7 projects actually which are just being set up at the moment, and then this competition which we're talking about here today, which we're hoping to get projects up and running early next calendar year. So to talk a little bit more about the road centre network, this is looking at over 300 sites across the key route network. As I say, these are the main arterial roads, so they carry over 50% of the traffic in the West Midlands. We're looking at emission sensors, we're looking at camera and radar sensors, and we're looking at the weather sensors as well. I think it's important to note that the rollout of those sensors and the availability of the data will be available for people to use. So when we talk about then the first element of the scope of the project, so this is looking now at the products and services and your opportunity for submitting ideas into the scope of the competition itself. So the first one really is utilising the available data. I'd like to encourage people to focus on the challenges. So what we'll be looking for are products and services which are addressing those challenges. So localised emissions hotspots. So is there a way of managing the regular, repeat congestion hotspots, but also other opportunities of managing incidents as well, which also might lead to more localised temporary hotspots, which is about congestion, but it could also be about emissions as well. Congestion is such a big issue across all of our towns and cities. So really, any of these products and services that can make a difference to reducing congestion, improving the flow of traffic, and reducing the emissions and improving health. Those are the sort of things that we're looking for. Okay, so the second area of the scope of the competition is around transport recovery. Chris talked about COVID. COVID has been a big challenge, clearly. with the varying advice because of the changes in COVID itself. So from discouraging people to use transport, transport is now starting to get back up to capacity. People are very nervous, understandably, to use transport. So one of the key challenges is how to provide the guidelines so that the operators work within the guidelines of health, but also how do we encourage people and give people choice for travel. So it could be times of day where transport is less busy. People might want to know what the busyness is on stations and platforms, but even on the services themselves. And that live data is really we see as being the big enabler. So think about what those products and services could be. How can you help the operators with those ideas? But also it's about revenue. So getting travellers back onto the public transport obviously improves revenue by its sort of fundamental nature. But it's also about other revenue streams which then help the transport authorities to improve their business. So that could be new products and services which travellers might want. I guess the other thing to think about as well, Chris mentioned it in the Transport for West Midlands overview, but the mobility as a service. So transport is now a much wider topic. So we talk about active transport. So that's getting people to get exercise, if you like, while they're travelling. So that might be the walking. It might be getting the e-scooters, which have been mentioned. It might be other means of last mile transport as well. So, you know, autonomous and connected cars are coming. And then the obvious buses and taxis and trams and trains as well. So are there ways of then linking all those things together again to encourage people to travel in that way? So the third area and third sort of scope grouping is around logistics. This is a sector which has also got challenges and we'd like to support that. So there's many challenges around efficiency and customer, what the customer is looking for, but it's also around operational efficiency and cost. So the challenge areas here are about interface for the pickup and drop off of could be parcels or freight, but also other opportunities around validating those goods transitioning from one carrier to another or from the customer to the carrier itself. So that's one area. There could be an improvement around dynamic journey planning. Again, something that is traditionally quite hard to do. Many things can change during a day, and can that be improved by 5G? Other hazards which could be avoided, whether they're sort of breakdowns, roadworks, other hazards that may be very much more dynamic. So it's the avoidance of those. It could be the maintenance again of vehicles. Again, a challenge for big operators to make sure that's done efficiently and effectively. Empty load operation is an area which is a big area of focus as well. So this is about trying to make sure that every mile counts. So whenever a vehicle is on the road, that it's in a paying environment. And then lastly, but not leastly, there could be operational efficiencies between different modes of transport as well, and logistics operators over and above that. So we're looking for products and services which could fulfill some or all of those areas in logistics. So what is it your project is aimed at in terms of time and maturity? So this slide is to try and give you some sense of that. So projects should be no more than 12 months long, because by the time the competition is launched, run and projects are set up, it's going to be around about February, March, we expect, before those projects are ready to go. And they must finish by March 22. So that gives you 12 months as a project duration. In terms of the maturity of the projects, we're expecting to see 3 months of trialing. So that would imply that you should have a good thought of around a proof of concept already. You may already have done some bench or lab testing, but this is about then developing those ideas for that trialing purpose. And there is a description there of what we're expecting. So what does your project need? So there's an absolute fundamental that it must require 5G as an enabler. So 5G should be there to either significantly enhance the product, or without 5G it couldn't happen at all. So please think about that. If 5G isn't required, then your project will be ineligible. So please do think about that. So it's about, and think about what aspect of 5G you benefit from. So is it the capacity that 5G offers? Is it the speed of transmission, or is it the security? It could be one, or it could be several of those aspects that you might be benefiting from. So once you've established that, you will also need to be using 5G during your testing. If you need any particular service from an operator, please consider that. Please make an approach to operators if you do need that help. If you need private networks, especially if you're thinking of a product or service which is indoor, then that may not be available right now, so you might need some help there. All of that help needs to be included in your bid, both in terms of cost, but also in terms of those partners being part of the bid. So how can we help you during this formative stage of your bid itself? So based on the learning experience from the first competition, we are going to make 5 dates available this time, so more dates scattered through the competition period. They'll be open for you to access, to book time slots with ourselves at WM5G and Chris and his team from Transport for West Midlands. We hold those consultations as a joint event, which I think is helpful. And the dates are displayed on the slide in front of you across October through to the end of November. So other considerations for your project: cybersecurity has got to be a consideration, especially if you're interacting with any of the transport services. Clearly, it needs to be a secure process that you use. We'd also like to encourage you to think around being a thought leader for your particular product around that. So please do think about that. The other key element is data management and being GDPR compliant. Again, you need to be making sure that any data that you're using is authentic, clearly, but also any data which is stored is GDPR compliant. So I'm sure everybody is already very well aware of those rules and regulations. So what is the impact of your project? So it's important that you're thinking about the business opportunity. I'm sure everyone will be, but we would like to see some evidence of how your project aligns to the programme objectives that I've talked about. So the traveller experience, the expansion of transport, and the efficiency of operation. How would you measure those benefits during the project? So that could be looking at journey time, it could be measuring emissions, etc., etc. So please think about that and provide some evidence in your submission. And what impact ultimately will your project have? So what I mean by this is, will your project be localized to a particular demographic of the population? Is it going to be local to a particular geographical area as well? Or are you thinking that your product then will have a national relevance when complete and successful? So we'd like to see evidence of all of that, please. So how are we funded? Well, we get our funding from both central government, from DCMS, and from local government through the West Midlands Combined Authorities, sponsored by Transport for West Midlands. So both of those government groups provide money to us. We then allocate that. So Innovate UK and KTN are helping to run the competition. We will then take that over in the final application stage and approval stage. We will then be running and monitoring the projects, and grant terms will then be available. So we will make those grant terms available actually during the competition open stage, just so that you have access to those. So the number of projects that we're expecting, so there's 2.5 million grant funding available. There's up to a maximum of 500,000 grant funding for each project. As I say, that they are less than 12 months in duration. So we're expecting somewhere between about 5 and 7 projects to be approved at the end of this. So finally, what does success look like? So we really want to support you. We want to support your businesses, so your ideas around new products and services. For us, success is your business grows, that the products make a difference, you leaving a legacy to both the West Midlands, but ideally it's also something of national relevance. But finally, it will make a difference to travel as well. So anyone who gets on the bus or the train or the tram, that whatever your product or service is will make a difference to everyone who travels. Okay, so thank you very much. As Chris said, we will be taking questions at the end. So I would like to hand over to Rachel Evans from Innovate UK.
So Rachel, I'm just going to hand over control to you, and we'll just go back to your original slide.
Thank you very much.
Okay, you should be good to go.
Brilliant, thank you very much. My name is Rachel Evans, I'm from Innovate UK, and I'm going to talk you through today the process related to applying for the competition. We'll go through the scope and eligibility criteria. We'll go through the innovation funding service, the application finances and the academic partners. And then we'll briefly go through how you submit your application, the assessment process and the project setup for those that are successful. So just a couple of introductions from my side. You have myself and JF Verde, who is the innovation lead. So just a little introduction to Innovate UK and UKRI. So we work with the government to invest over 7 billion a year in research and innovation by partnering with academia and industry to make the impossible possible. Through the UK's 9 leading academic and industrial funding councils, we create knowledge with impact. So I'm going to move past the scope because we've also already just gone through all of that, and we'll move on to the eligibility criteria. So to be eligible for this competition, the lead must be a UK registered business, collaborate with others, including a communications network provider, public or private, or communications integrator. You must carry out your project in the UK, exploit the results from within the UK, claim grant funding of up to 500,000 and have a project length of up to 12 months. So this slide here shows the types of organisations we fund. So this can be a business, small, micro, medium or large, registered in the UK. We then have research organisations. So these include universities, non-profit distributing research and technology organisations, public sector research establishments and research council institutes. We then have public sector organisations and charities doing research activity. We suggest that you check out the EU definition of a business. It may affect the grant you are able to claim, and the link you can see there is on the slide, and these will be made available to you afterwards. So eligibility for state aid. In order to be eligible to receive state aid, you must pass the undertakings in difficulty test. This only applies to limited liability companies that are more than 3 years old. If you have a parent or holding company, the test can be performed on your parent or holding company. You should make sure that your business is eligible before you submit an application. If you are successful in the competition, we will apply this test as part of our eligibility checks. So this competition will run under the State Aid Article 25. There's some more information on the screen there, and we also suggest that you check out our website regarding this article before you apply for the competition. So the participation rules for this competition. So the aim of our state aid scheme is to optimise the level of funding to a business and recognise the importance of research-based projects. Contract research and provision of research services are not considered forms of collaboration. For collaborations between businesses, no one business partner can be responsible for more than 70% of the total eligible project costs. For collaborations between businesses and research organisations, the research organisation must bear at least 10% of the total eligible project costs and have the right to publish their own research. So what is collaboration? In all collaborative projects, there must be at least 2 organisations claiming grant within the application. This does need to include the lead. A business-led consortium, which may involve both business and the research base, and evidence of an effective collaboration. So we would expect to see the structure and rationale of the collaboration described in the application. So please bear this in mind when applying. So making more than one application, any one business may be involved in up to 3 applications to this competition, but can only be the lead partner in one application. If a research and technology organisation is not the lead on any application, they can be partner in any number of applications. So if you have an outstanding final claim and an independent accountant report on a live Innovate UK project, you cannot be eligible to apply for grant funding in this competition as a lead or a partner organisation. Also, if you have applied to a previous competition as the lead or sole company and were awarded funded by Innovate UK, but did not make a substantial effort to exploit that award, we will award no more funding to you. So this slide shows some key dates of this competition. So the competition opens on the 14th of September. The briefing event is today and the 15th of September. Submission deadline is the 2nd of December, and interviews will take place the week commencing 18th of January. We'll then aim to have applicants informed by the 29th of January 2021. So the Innovation Funding Service. When you click apply on the competition webpage, you will be directed here. Use the keyword search to find the competition you are interested in. Click on the link and it opens the competitions. If you click on the competition to see a tabbed view of the eligibility criteria, scope, key dates and information on how to apply. So when you're happy to apply, simply click the green button. So to apply for a competition, the lead applicant will need to create an account. So if you've already applied for previous competitions on IFS, you can simply click apply, login. You can use Companies House lookup to search for your organisation to save typing in the names and addresses. If you are not on Companies House, you can then manually enter your information. And we do advise that research organisations and academics manually enter your information so that you're not filed as a business, and therefore you can claim the right amount of funding. So a little overview of the first section, so project details. So the application teams, so collaborators inviting organisations who you are working with on the project. Contributors invite colleagues from your own organisation to help you complete your application. You'll then go through the application details. Title, timescales, research category, innovation area and resubmission, if it's a yes or a no. The project summary is a short summary and objectives of the project, including what is innovative about it. Public description of your project, which will be published if you are successful, so please bear this in mind when writing. And scope, how does your project align with the scope of the competition? So if your project is not in scope, it will be ineligible for funding. So the application questions, 10 questions covers 3 key areas in which we run through, 11 questions, and we'll go through some detail over. This all can be found under the How to Apply tab on IFS. Please note, very detailed guidance is associated with each question on IFS, and questions 2, 3, 5, 7 and 8 all have appendices included where you can submit additional information. So I'm just going to briefly run you through the application finances. So to claim funding, your business does not have to be UK registered with Companies House when you apply, but it must be registered before you can receive funding. So you are unable to claim funding if you are an overseas organisation, so your company number begins with FC. Your organisation is set up as a branch, so your company number begins with BR, and your company is based in Jersey, so your company number begins with JE. So labour costs. Enter the role within the project, gross annual salaries, the number of staff and the days to be spent on the project. It will then automatically calculate the total costs. If you have multiple people in the same role on the same average salary, enter this role in the role within project field. So if an employee is part-time, you should enter their cost as full-time equivalent, and you can adjust the wording days per year from the default if this is different for your project. So overheads. We define overheads as additional costs and operational expenses incurred directly as a result of the project. These could include additional costs for administrators, staff, general IT, and rent and utilities. You can select from the 3 options you can see on the screen how you would like your overheads calculated. Material costs. Please be clear on what the materials are. Just putting consumables does not provide enough detail, and we will request more information should you be successful. You need to enter and describe the materials you intend to use on the project, the volume and the cost. The materials listed must be project specific. Please also provide as much information as possible. For example, just putting consumables 50,000, this does not provide enough detail and will be required to provide more information for the project finance team if you are successful. Any items which you would usually depreciate as per your company's policy should be listed in capital usage. Materials supplied by associated companies or subcontractors from any other consortium members, these must be listed at cost, excluding any profit element or margin. So subcontractors, capital equipment uses. Here you'll need to describe how you're using the equipment, whether it is new or existing, the new purchase cost, how long you will be depreciating it over, and the residual value at the end. These calculations will need to be in line with your accounting processes. Subcontractors. So to be eligible for subcontractors, it needs to be justified and quantified. If using non-UK subcontractors are being used, you will need to provide strong justification on why any UK-based subcontractor is not being used. And if you're subcontracting to a parent or sister company, please ensure you list at cost and do not include profit. So for travel and subsistence, costs must be directly linked to the project. Please break down your costs as follows: travel, accommodation and subsistence. If you have an annual trip to visit the parent company, this is not an eligible cost. So any other costs, costs that could not be added under previous headings, do not double count, and patent filing costs for new IP SMEs up to 7,500. So please check the finance guide for what costs can be included here. If you're unsure, please do not hesitate to contact customer support. So funding. The funding rules. The level of funding awarded will depend upon the type of organisation and the type of research being undertaken in the project. Funding is calculated by project participant. IFS will advise the maximum grant percentage you can request based upon your answers to the type and size of your organisation, your research category defined by the lead applicant in the application details of your application. So academic partners. So we use the Research Council's Joint Electronic Submission System, otherwise known as JES, to collect academic finances. The JES system automates the collection of full economic costs, base costs from academic partners, and tells them exactly what numbers should be used in the application form for their costs. Also to collect project finance details from non-HEIs, for example, RTOs that are claiming that they are carrying out academic quality work and want to be funded on an FEC basis. Using a JES means that Innovate UK follows Standard Research Council guidelines on funding universities and enables research councils to easily co-fund Innovate UK projects. So project costs for academic partners. So you'll need to enter the TSB reference number here. Enter the TSB contribution column figures from your JES output document into the project cost section of the application. And then you'll need to upload the JES with council status form as a PDF at the bottom of the screen. Please ensure all the figures match the form exactly. So application elements of JES, not just the financials, so justification of resource, pathways to impact, and full details on the JES system. Any queries about JES via the JES help desk on the email address or phone number on the screen, so you can direct all your questions to them directly. So just a little bit about submitting your application. For collaborative applications, IFS will highlight to the lead applicant any partners who have outstanding project finance to complete. All finances must be included in the application before the lead applicant can submit. It will also check that your research participation costs within the required limits, and IFS does not validate project costs. If you are responsible to ensure that all costs are within eligible total project costs as stated in the brief guidance. So we are able to track the usage and submission uploads. So this table here just shows how many submissions we get in the final hour of submission. Please note that IFS will close at 11 AM, so we won't be able to take any more application after 11 AM. If you are having technical difficulties, please contact our customer support in good time so that they can help you submit. We also recommend that you submit as early as possible on the day of submission, just to avoid any issues as we get closer to the submission deadline. So the assessment. So the application assessment, all applications are assessed by independent assessors drawn from industry and academia. So when they are assessing your application, they look for clear and concise answers, the right amount of information, not too much detail with no assumptions, quantification and justification, and a proposal that presents a viable opportunity for growth, a level of innovation that necessitizes public sector investment and has the right team and approach to be successful. So what you need to keep a good hold on is keeping the assessors engaged and interested in your proposal. You want them to be fascinated and excited by your idea. So just a quick note on feedback. The feedback is compiled using the written comments of the independent assessors who review and assess the applications. It is intended to be constructive in nature and to highlight both the strong as well as the weak areas of your application. So please bear in mind that because applications are assessed by a number of assessors, you may receive information which appears to be conflicting. This may reflect their different interpretations of the proposal that you submitted. It must also be noted that some proposals may appear to have been favourably assessed based on their comments. In such instances, it could be that your proposal simply fell below the funding thresholds, with others achieving a higher merit score overall. So a little bit about scoring. We review scores and feedback to check the assessors are adhering to our guidelines and scoring fairly. In some cases where we feel that a score is unjust and not supported by feedback, we may remove that score as an outlier and update the total score for the application. Please be aware that both low and high outliers may be removed, and as a result, scores may increase or decrease. So the score spread shows the difference between the top and the bottom scores. If the score spread is 30 or more, we look to see if an outlier is apparent. If there is a 3 or more appear in either the two columns, count of no scope or count of no recommended, we review the application's feedback, and if justified, the application would not be eligible for funding. So the green highlights a particular assessor's score. The purple box highlights a set of scores for a particular question. We look for a difference of 20 or more within the assessor's total score to identify an outlier. At first glimpse, we would consider assessor 3 to be the outlier with a score of 62, but this must be backed up by the written feedback. So the lead will be notified when your feedback is available. They would go onto their IFS dashboard to view the feedback. So interviews. If you are invited to progress to interview, you can bring up to 6 people to attend the interview. You will have 20 minutes to present a maximum of 20 PowerPoint slides with no videos or embedded links. There is a 40-minute Q&A session led by members of the panel. And presentations and presenters' names have to be provided ahead of the interview. Final contracting will be done directly through WM5G. So on the screen here, you can just see some key details and links for you to contact if you are having any issues when submitting your application. Our customer support hours are on the screen, and the Knowledge Transfer Network website and Innovate UK's website for your information. Thank you very much, and I think I'll hand back to Andy.
Thanks, Rachel. I'm just going to assume control and open my video and just check something that's coming. Okay, so I'm just going to stop sharing this. Can I ask the panelists? There you are. That's brilliant. Thank you very much. JF, are you there as well? Thank you very much. So we've got the opportunity for questions and answers here. We've got a few questions in already. Let me just pull 1 or 2 of them up. So one question is the competition operating a portfolio approach, i.e. across different verticals? Yeah, I've got that duplicated twice written down, sorry. So is the competition operating a portfolio approach, i.e. across different verticals.
Would you like me to answer that, Andy?
Yes, if that's okay. Yeah.
Okay. So the answer is yes, it will be. So we're looking with a number of projects, I guess, across those three scope areas. So portfolio approach will be used to make sure that we don't just invest in one topic area.
Brilliant, thank you. I've just been reminded by Anita that also we're running Meeting Mojo sessions. So you should have received as delegates a Meeting Mojo invite. So if you want to have a chat with other businesses, and particularly JF, who's on the panel here from Innovate UK, you can book time for a quick chat. And also, if somebody, there is a specific Meeting Mojo link to West Midlands 5G. So if you want to book time with West Midlands 5G, you're able to do that too. There's information in the chat on that Richard has popped in. So we have another question. As it is mandated that an MNO has to be involved, how and who do we collaborate with to discuss our solution to see if they wish to collaborate? And are the slides being sent out afterwards? Yes, the slides are being sent out. I think there's a multiple answer, but I'll allow Chris to go first on the first one. So let me repeat the question. As it is mandated that an MNO has to be involved, how and who do we collaborate with to discuss our solution to see if they wish to collaborate?
Okay, so I guess in terms of the operators, some organisations already have relationships with particular MNOs, so we haven't been specific in terms of who to deal with. Clearly, if anybody needs some help making contact with MNOs, then we can assist with that, as we have contacts in each operator. Clearly, we can make those lead points of contact available, so we could issue those, Andy, through either the Q&A or we could launch that as well through the TfWM 5G website associated with the competition. So I suggest actually we probably do both.
Yeah, I think there's also a conversation, something that delegates can do in the background to identify who MNOs you might, which MNOs you might want to talk to. There's a supplier directory which is available on UK 5G. And if you go to UK 5G and click supplier directory, there's a list of MNOs and people in the supply chain there. And excuse me if you can hear some drilling. Next door is having a bathroom fitted. It's not my tummy. I don't know if you can hear.
Can I just add something there to these questions? It's not only the MNOs, actually. The specifications calls for also communications integrator, for instance. You don't need to go necessarily through an MNO. Although, of course, if you are looking at deploying or using a commercial 5G offering in a public area, you will have to go through an MNO. It might be that the 5G might be deployed by a communications integrator, and you will have sufficient expertise from that integrator.
Thanks, JF. We've got 3 more questions come in. So can you advise on when the website address will be available for all the details of the call? JF?
Yeah, well, it will be on the 14th. So the website will be open, and we will it will be advertised obviously on the usual Innovate UK website, and I'm sure that Anita or somebody will actually put the website on the panel on the right. But yes, it will be, if you search for Innovate UK funding, you will be able to scroll through all the competitions, and you will find the WF5G 5G competitions round 2 open at that time.
Okay, and also I'm sure it's going to be on the WM 5G website. There'll be a link to all the details there, and there will also be a link on the UK 5G and KTN website. So if you just do a quick search, you will get to all the information you need. Okay, second question. Is there any feedback on the first round and how it is progressing?
Okay, I'll take that one. So the first round, the projects were notified on time at the end of June, and we have been working with those consortiums to go through the due diligence and setup. So, as I think I might have mentioned actually in the presentation that that we're about to announce the 7 consortiums that have now just in the process of starting. So we will be doing that actually in the next couple of weeks or so.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Another question here is, why does an MNO need to be involved? 3.8 to 4.2 gigahertz spectrum is available, albeit not nationally. Is there a specific specification around that? Chris, JF?
Well, if the project is using a commercial offering, obviously there's you don't need to go any further than that. It might be that you would need to work with an MNO to expand in the particular area, or use a specific device, for instance, to connect to the network. I'm not sure what the license question is related to here. Can you repeat the question on the license?
So all I've got is notes from Richard. Richard, can you chime in if there's something I'm not saying? So why does an MNO need to be involved? Question mark. 3.8.
Okay. The 3.8 or 4.2 is not yet, the spectrum is not yet available. Is that the questions? Well, that's really if the project could be related to this particular spectrum. However, it is not yet fully available, so it might be a test, for instance, so it might be and you will need to work very closely with an MNO in order to have the right license to deploy such. Yes?
Yeah, thanks, JF. Yeah, indeed, a couple of questions sort of on YouTube about this. I think the key thing is the spectrum. So the MNOs have the lion's share of the 3.8, 4.2 gig spectrum. However, there's wiggle room, and certainly some private networks have this as well. And of course, 5G is not just 3.8 to 4.2, though clearly if you're going for some sort of mass consumer sort of thing, that's where the enhanced mobile broadband is going to be. So it would make sense to have a piece of that spectrum to do it. But I'd suggest having the accessibility to the spectrum you need for your use and your environment is more important than getting an MNO. If it provided you have the rights and freedom to use the spectrum you propose, not a problem.
Andy, can I just add something as well?
Yes, of course. Yes.
So I guess 5G and the mobile comms. So I guess there's two sides to it. One is making sure that you've got the best possible connection. 5G is still developing, so knowing what's available, where it's available, would indicate that a conversation with the MNOs would be a good idea. I guess the other thing is in terms of measuring the performance of the mobile comms. So if you remember, I guess we're looking for the development of those products and services, but we're also looking for data to say how that mobile comms system is working. So we'd be looking for you to generate information to say how quickly the data is transmitted. Maybe it might be around some of the security protocols, those kind of things, which, although you might be able to use a 5G connection, actually getting hold of that information is going to be very, very difficult unless you have either a private network provider, an integrator, or an MNO on board. So it's partly about having access and being able to measure some of those things as well during the course of your project.
JF, did you have a?
Yes, I was just looking at the questions in real time. Well, the follow-up questions actually, and the 3.8, 4.2 gigahertz, and so on the light license spectrum. Yes, as I said before, the partner doesn't need to be necessarily an MNO. So the answer to these questions is it's okay to partner with an MNO, but if you have another operator, whether private network, for instance, private 5G networks, then it's okay also, as long as you can support your project from a technical, 5G perspective.
Okay, just to reiterate, if you go to the timestamp in YouTube chat to 11:01, you'll see a link so you can meet the WM 5G team and talk about this project there. You'll be able to make some meetings there to collaborate, open up the collaboration conversations. So we have another question, which is, I'm not quite sure how this is phrased, but is do all collaborative companies, sorry, Richard, around the collaboration statement you've made on here, just as you passed along to me in the question, it says all collaborated companies have to be from the West Midlands. Is that correct? No. So I'm just waiting for an update. So I think the question is, does anybody have to be from the West Midlands specifically?
So again, if I can take that one. So the answer is no. I guess we're looking for the testing to be done in the West Midlands because of the live test bed, if you like. So if organisations are based elsewhere in the country, then that could be okay. You just need to think around the logistics of setting up and then testing and trialing in the West Midlands.
Okay. There's another question coming. Is there a possibility to have insight on the 7 projects that have already started, so there are no crossovers?
So the answer is yes, but it's going to be a couple of weeks until that information will be made public.
And will you be adding it to the competition page so people can, your end on WM5G, so people can...
Well, it'll certainly be on the WM5G website. We will go live with that. It's going to be on the UK 5G site as well. Yeah. We can make a link from the competition. That's probably a good idea, Andy, actually, if we do that.
Okay, have we got any further questions from delegates?
I think they're all questioned out, Andy.
Okay, so it's 11:18, and we're due to wrap up in a few minutes. Nothing coming in. Shall we wrap up slightly early? I just want to thank everybody for contributing their presentations towards this briefing, and thank you very much for having patience as we do one of these Zoom briefings again. And thanks to all the delegates for attending. We hope you have a fantastic and successful application process, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. If you need further information or anything occurs to you during the next week, we are doing another briefing next week on the 15th, and if you go to the KTN website, you can register your interest there and attend another briefing. It won't be done over YouTube as this one has. It will be done via Zoom, and we will be running a slightly different session, but it will be the same content. So if you need to see that content again, we will be available to do that on the 15th at 10 o'clock in the morning. So it just stands for me to ask everybody to say goodbye in University Challenge style.
Goodbye.
Thank you very much. And we look forward to seeing your application soon. Thank you very much. Bye.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.